Magnus opens with 1 e4. Gukesh plays e5. Magnus took 17 seconds for his first move. We have the Rui Lopez on the board, and Gukesh goes for the very solid Berlin. The anti-Berlin is played with d3, and the bishop comes out to c5. Which line will Magnus choose? There are many. You can take on c6. You can play c3. Many different ways in which you can continue in this position. He brings his knight out to c3. This is much less popular because you can go knight d4 here, which is a very interesting line. And I believe this is one of the main reasons why this is less played. Castles by Gukesh. Take, take. And of course you can't take the pawn. Queen d4 is a double attack. So bishop e3. Gukesh goes back to d6. Bishop comes to g5. Pinning here. And h6 is played. Gukesh has the bishop pair. Magnus asks the question to this bishop. You don't want to be taking on f6. Bishop h4 makes a lot of sense. And now, can Gukesh go g5? I think that's not a particularly great idea, like g5 here, because after bishop g3 he can attack with maybe h4. So Gukesh can go something like a5, maybe queen e7 makes sense, rook e8. These are all standard moves. He goes bg4. And Magnus asks a question to the bishop. If you go back, g4 could be very dangerous. So he takes, queen takes, and brings his bishop back to e7. Not so sure with this entire maneuver of bringing the bishop and taking it on f3. It felt like Gukesh gave up the biggest edge in the position. And look at this decision by Magnus. He's gone, he's taken the knight. So he's saying my knight is now superior to your bishop. And he goes g3, h4. Limiting this bishop. Wow, this is incredible play by Magnus. Is this the right decision? I'm not so sure. But it does show how Magnus is so intuitive and has this positional feel. Bishop goes back to e7. Gukesh is like, I need to make my bishop better, and this is the best diagonal on the board. So he goes back, and maybe at some point he's looking for this f5 breakthrough. Although truth be told, it could lead to a positionally bad stuff. Like look at this, take, and the knight gets this beautiful e4 square. So you must do it with a lot of care. Gukesh goes bishop c5. Yes, first improve the position of your bishop, hitting the f2 pawn, and then maybe try to find some counterplay with your queen side pawns rolling down. King g2, a very useful move. And maybe Magnus could try for a king side attack. By the way, knight goes back. You can't take this pawn. Rook b1 will take this on b7. So that's not particularly great. Although it's playable. Let's see Gukesh what he does. Also, you don't need to worry about why taking this bishop. I mean, let him take it. You are more than happy as black. But Gukesh preserves the bishop. g4 by Magnus. Very interesting. The harmony. You want to attack here on the king side. You also want to swivel your knight over to f5. And the time right now, Magnus has 3 minutes 44. Gukesh has maintained good clock timing. He has 4 minutes, 3 minutes 47 seconds now. He goes g6. And he's playing against this maneuver. But this does give you a hook. Knight g3. Magnus plays his knight here. The hook is with h5, which will force g5, and the knight would jump into f5 then. And Gukesh maybe has to figure out what are his plans. Queen e7, attacking the pawn on h4. Rook moves to h1. The rook goes to d8. And Gukesh finds a very nice plan, by the way. He's going rook d6, rook f6, and attacking this f2 pawn with the bishop. And that's the reason why Magnus has to pause a bit. He goes a4. Maybe he's trying for a5. a5. Gukesh himself plays it. Generally, putting the pawns on the same color as your bishop is not a good idea. But here, it doesn't matter much, it feels as of now, because the bishop has a good diagonal. Queen e2. Playing against this plan, Gukesh gets his rook up. Queen goes to d2, attacking the pawn here on h6. The tension is mounting. King g7 seems like a good plan, but then do you see the king and queen? How are they located? Knight f5 check. Forks should not be underestimated somewhere. Okay. Anyway, Gukesh has to focus now. King g7, h5 played by Magnus. Beautiful chess. He wants to take here. and then attack h6, and you can't be taking with your rook because suddenly the knight jumps. So many problems that Gukesh has to solve, but there is one solution to it. The solution is go queen g5, trade the queens, and that would give you a fine position. And Gukesh is considering that his time is running a bit lower than Magnus, but both have enough time. 3 minutes in such a position is good time to play. And look at Magnus's focus there. He's just trying his level best to create something from this minimal advantage that he has. And Gukesh finds it. He plays queen g5. Magnus instantly takes it. Hg5 played. And now, what do you do next as white? Because rook f6 will be easily met with f3. So your position looks safe. But how do you create play? And this is where Magnus is an absolute genius. He goes knight f1. He wants to go to d2 and c4. His knight will attack the bishop and the pawn and the rook and the pawn. And another idea could be rook a3, rook b3 or rook b1, b4. At these plans, there is just show that white has so many possibilities. Meanwhile, black, what is black going to do? Because the bishop in static positions can cover only one color complex, which is the dark squares, while the knight can move on a dark square, a light square, and that's the advantage of knight in closed and slow positions. But Gukesh has to find his position is fine. Play bd4, provoke c3, go back, make d3 weak. These are the ideas that Gukesh does have, and he needs to be very creative here with the black pieces not to fall under Magnus's spell of amazing positional play. But right now, you can feel the tension for Gukesh from his time usage. He's used close to 1 minute. Plays rook f6, Magnus instantly plays f3 and asks Gukesh, what's your next plan now? Well, Gukesh always tries to do something active. My idea is that bishop d4 is a good place for the bishop because whenever it's kicked, the d3 pawn can get weak. You can start attacking here. But I believe Gukesh finds another plan. He goes rook f4, very dangerous plan. He wants to play f5, but more than Magnus, it could get dangerous for Gukesh himself. Hg by Magnus, and you can't take with the king because f5 would have been weak. Rook h3, defending here. Now you can see these pawns are a bit weakened. e5 is isolated. Still the position is holdable. Go bd4, wait here, or maybe wait with rook f7. Or other rook to f7. Play something there, but he goes rook h8, a mistake, a huge mistake, this trade. Why is it a huge mistake? Because without two rooks, you cannot create counterplay. And now the board is free for the knight to roam around along with the white rook. Magnus, just like that, magically has got himself into a winning position. It might seem magical just like that, but you saw it, yeah? How Magnus slowly viewed his position. It was insane. It was incredible. Now knight c4. Gukesh is worried. His e5 pawn is weak. This idea, he goes back rook f6. Knight jumps, attacking e5. He needs to protect it. Rook e6 and rook b1. Idea b4, take, rook b4, a5, b7 pawn, destroyed. Nothing to do. c5, stopping b4. Oof. But look at this bishop now. Terrible. Rook h1 check, king comes up. Magnus goes king f2. He's now bringing his king in. Bishop goes back to a7. And now here, he can continue with his plan. King e2, king d2. But he can also take this pawn. Now, taking this pawn is a bit risky. One must agree. Because then c4, a check could come in. And it could be something. Although not so sure. I mean, it's bold decision. You don't want to change the character of the position. The bishop is bad. Why to make it active? And but Magnus is one who doesn't really shirk away from complications. He takes, king takes, and he's like, Gukesh, I'm a pawn up now. Tell me, what do you have? b7 pawn is hanging. You really don't want to play the move b6. It just shuts down your bishop. King c4 coming up, or king e2. Both seem fine. Magnus also has 2 minutes plus on the clock. Gukesh down to 30 seconds. King c4 calmly played there by Magnus. And now Gukesh, well, there's nothing much to do here, yeah. Rook a6, he attacks the knight. The knight takes the pawn on b7. And Magnus knows that he's going to win this. Takes b4 played. Blocking the check. c5 is not possible. Knight controls that square. The rook is ready to enter via d file, which will be complete disaster. Rook a6 played. And there you have it. Rook comes to d1. Check. Knight can come back. He doesn't want to even trade the knights. Goes back king b3. Maybe c4 will come up next. Bishop d4. Rook d3 with the idea of c3. Keeping complete control here. The bishop has to move. Bishop f2 played. And now the knight. Can we get it back into the game via a5? Oh, rook d7. Beautiful move. And bishop e1. Is that what Gukesh wants to play? He goes rook b6. Rook takes c7. Resigns there.